Aliens are real. UAPs, as they're now called, have been visiting the Earth for decades, and the government knows. Maybe. Welcome to Sidetrack, your sci-fi TV and movie channel where science fiction seems to be becoming science fact.
Is there life beyond our little blue planet, and how much does the government know about it?
On Wednesday, the House of Representatives Committee had a hearing, and at that hearing there were 3 guests. Those guests very calmly sat down and answered questions from the committee, and basically sat there and said that, yes, the Earth is being visited by extraterrestrial life, and the government knows about it. Science fiction is no longer science fiction. Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind? That's an historical documentary. I'm sounding a little sarcastic here, but what you guys might not know, and some of you do, is that before I did the Sidetrack channel, I had a mystery and conspiracy channel, and I talked about aliens a lot. And to be honest, the last 5 or 6 years has been quite interesting, where actually the Senate committee have really asked a lot of questions about the UFO phenomenon. And we've actually found out that the government has been hiding a lot. So, most of you saw the Tic Tac videos that were released during lockdown. There's a lot of jokes that went around. We were all locked down, all had COVID. The US government admitted aliens were real and nobody cared.
Those were the questions a House Oversight Subcommittee attempted to answer Wednesday as they heard testimony from a former Air Force intelligence officer and 2 Navy veterans.
Well, a lot of people did care. The Tic Tac video, the Speedster video, and the other UFO videos that were released at the time that the Pentagon said they didn't know what they were have been widely debunked, or at very least, a lot of people have tried very, very hard to debunk them.
Lawmakers are demanding to know what the Pentagon has in its files on unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, the government term for UFOs. CBS News' Scott MacFarlane reports from Capitol Hill,
telling us that these unusual orbs and things are actually just other aircraft, that they're not to be, concerned about, that they're nothing. And basically ignore what the pilots say because, they're just mistaken. The evidence is this, and you shouldn't worry about it. Now, I am in 2 minds about that because I genuinely firmly believe we should follow evidence. And after having a mystery and conspiracy channel, I can actually tell you that the more you dig into a lot of these stories that we know so well, the more you actually realize that a lot of them are just not true. That unfortunately, the reality of a lot of UFO sightings is really boring. But I can also tell you there are some cases that I couldn't explain, that nobody that witnessed it could explain, and that have been investigated very thoroughly, and we can't explain. There are mysteries out there. The truth is out there too.
Alien films are a Hollywood staple, so perhaps no surprise.
The American people deserve to know what is happening in our skies.
There was a line out the door with people anxious for the government to share more about UFOs.
In the Baptist Church, we'd say that the devil's in our way.
A former intelligence officer, David Grush, testified he suspects the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, or UAP, office is covering up a decades-long program to retrieve crashed objects.
And all of a sudden, the senators, particularly at this committee hearing, seem to be trying hard to find out what it is. So who was at the Senate committee hearings, and should we be taking them seriously? Well, David Grush was an ex-intelligence analyst and he became a whistleblower. He actually ran a team for the Department of Defense until 2003. Now, the Pentagon have said that his claims are false, but he has said that even though he's not seen any aliens or UFOs or partial spacecraft or anything himself.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
The Pentagon has denied Grush's claims. Two former military pilots also recounted their close encounters.
This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field.
Former military pilot David Fravor testified he was astonished by what he saw in the sky.
No, I think it's far beyond actually our material science that we currently possess.
He has spoken to 40 or more people that have. He has conducted thorough interviews and become convinced that the US government is actually hiding a program that its sole purpose is to recover either partial or entire alien spacecrafts, and that they've been doing it for decades.
Congress signaled it'll ask federal agencies and the Pentagon to be more transparent.
Many people believe that we're withholding information from them
on any unexplained aerial phenomena incidents, of which there have been at least 366 reported since early 2021.
Do you think anybody's mind was changed because of this?
I think they will when they see this. They see those men. They're not just some random people off the street.
Now, he actually didn't say an awful lot in the committee hearing, but the committee hearing was an open to the public hearing. There were lots and lots of people there desperately waiting to see it. If you actually look across the front row and you're a bit of a UFO fan, you'll recognize a few of the faces. These hearings, though, do give a lot of legitimacy to what he's saying. Even though he did sit there and say quite a lot, I can't answer that question because that information is still classified, and I'd really quite like not to go to prison, please. He was able to say a lot of things, and he was very careful in his answers that sometimes the senator would try to ask the question a different way, and he would answer it a different way, giving us the information that we have to read between the lines a little bit, but not giving so much information that he wasn't arrested as soon as he walked out the door.
And Scott McFarland joins me now. Scott, I'm going to save the question I want to ask you first to my second question. So I'm going to ask you the first question, which is, lawmakers really said this was about national security. Can you help us understand their argument in those terms?
There's been a consistent argument from both parties that if you have mysterious items in the sky, they are, if nothing else, a danger to military aircraft in the sky and potentially a danger to U.S. security below. There was this parallel pair of arguments today that either these things are foreign objects from other countries to spy on us or to get near us, which is a national security issue, or we don't know what these things are, which is a national security issue. Listen to this exchange early during the hearing between a Wisconsin congressman and the witness at the witness table.
Do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had.
Identifying friend from foe is very important to us. And so when we have unidentified targets and we continue to ignore those due to a stigma or a fear of what it could be, that's an opening that our adversaries can take advantage of.
The two other people in the hearing were David Fravor and Ryan Graves. Now, David Fravor in particular is a personality that's always very much interested me. He's appeared on Joe Rogan, he's appeared on other things over the years, and he was really the pilot that kicked off the Nimitz incident, the TikTok video that the Pentagon have never been able to identify. So it's that very famous video that we've all seen with the object, and they're playing about it, and you can hear the voices going, oh my God, there's a whole fleet of them, and blah, blah, blah. Now, he wasn't one of the pilots that actually recorded that film. What he did was he went out, he said that there was an object that had dropped 80,000 feet in a second, and he was ordered to go and identify it. Him, with another aircraft, went and did that, and they ended up flying around this tic-tac object for several minutes. He said it did maneuvers that were physically impossible, that they have technology that is way beyond the means of anything we have, that mechanically and from a materialistic point of view, it was doing things that just were not possible. He then told somebody else what had happened, and then when they went on their mission, they recorded what we then saw. That video then got leaked about 10 years later. This happened apparently in 2004. We didn't see the videos until 2020.
One connective tissue between all these witnesses and the members of Congress on the dais, John, they're all arguing that the public's on their side, that there's this tonnage of Americans who want more information, want the government to open their books more. They think public sympathy or public opinion is sympathetic to them.
He was also joined by Ryan Graves. Now, Ryan Graves, like Fravor, were both military pilots, and they both talked about how seeing objects by other pilots had become regular, that there was a massive stigma, and that actually your job was at risk if you reported it sometimes, but that it was commonplace. If you get genuine pilots out there that are telling these things, and that most importantly, don't change their story, that was a big thing for me. Researching a lot of UFO incidents over the years, you can almost tell the nonsense ones because the eyewitnesses, their story changes over years. People listen to the story and they're amazed, and then they're not so amazed when they get told it the third time. So all of a sudden, the eyewitness remembers something else, and people are amazed again and take interest in them. Fravor and Ryan Graves have never done that I'm aware of. Their story has stayed consistent.
So this is the question I want to know. Scott, was there a stop the presses moment? Was there, and you sort of got at this at in the final question of your piece, but you know, where people thought, oh wow, that's something new, or because it sounds like a lot of claims, things seen, reports, and so forth, but we've heard that before.
A lot of this had the aura and feel and dialogue of overnight AM radio and the types of talk you hear down at the dial late at night, where there's a lot of theories, a lot of I heard this, I heard that, this guy saw this guy saw that. I'll tell you what jumped out at me, John. There was a line round the bend to get into this room today. To put it mildly, Congress is not a Taylor Swift concert. They don't put on much of a show here. It was as if these people in line thought Alf himself was going to be up on the dais and there'd be a spectacle to enjoy. That does speak to something, though, more serious. There is public interest in this issue, and these members of Congress are good at two things: at identifying an issue that people will talk about and minding the interests of their constituents. And I believe they think they hit a sweet spot with their constituents with this hearing today.
One of the things Ryan Graves talked about, and that David Fravor agreed with actually, is that there is a big problem here at the moment, that because there are so many of these unidentified flying objects, these UAPs as well, that actually it means there's a high risk of, even if these objects might not be a risk to national security, the problem is that because they start ignoring these UAPs, something that is genuinely a risk might slip through. Now, we know the Chinese have been trying to spy on the Americans. They've been doing that balloon thing they did not long ago, and other ways. So what he's basically saying is, look, we don't think these aliens are a threat, but we do think possibly something else might get through because we're chasing these things or ignoring them because we think it's one of these UAPs.
So what happens next, and what do they want to do with this information from today?
One short-term thing, one long-term thing. Even before this hearing began, the U.S. Senate is seriously considering an amendment to a must-pass piece of legislation they're debating this week that would require the National Archives to release periodically government reports on UFOs to make the information accessible and digestible to the public. Longer-term goals, a lot of House members walked out of that hearing and told me they're thinking about their own pieces of legislation to require more transparency in the federal government. John, you know from all these years we've been doing this.
That is an interesting way of looking at it, and the only way a soldier basically would look at it. The Ministry of Defence actually had to release a statement about this a few years ago over here in the UK. And they actually said, yes, we do look into some of these unidentified flying objects when they're reported to us, but they are not a risk to national security. Now, that's not a denial. That's not them saying UFOs and UAPs don't exist and that aliens aren't invading our airspace. All they're saying is they're not a risk. Do they know something we don't know?
Congress loves to argue that the federal agencies need to be more transparent, more open with information. They have found yet another platform on which to make that argument.
Yes, indeed they do. Scott MacFarlane on Capitol Hill. Thanks a lot, Scott.
So is science fiction quickly becoming science fact? David Grush even said that there was non-human beings discovered in some of these alien vessels and that we have those alien beings. So the movie Paul is actually true. And maybe he's a stoner too, I don't know. But look, I might be a little bit sarcastic about this and I might poke fun of it a little bit, just like they do in the news report that I've been running through this video. But actually, this is something that we need to look into properly. The American government has had to admit that over the last several decades, they have had different programs to look into, to try and identify, and to try to track unknown alien vessels in our sky. And by that I mean just unidentified flying objects, not necessarily ET. The interesting part about that is, though, they denied it for decades. Operation Blue Book is quite a famous research project. They basically said that was the last time we ever did it, and that was back in the 60s. But it turns out they never stopped. Why is the Department of Defense and the Pentagon in the United States spending so much money on this research if there's nothing to it? They do need to start being a little bit more honest. And if there is something out there, we actually should know. We can take it. So just tell us. And if there isn't, prove it so that we can stop talking about it. Guys, I'd love to know what you think about these congressional hearings and the government basically legitimizing these people by bringing them in and talking to them like this. We do get people like Dr. Steve Agria, which I am very much in two minds about, that he has done some brilliant work for the UFO community, but he has also been a bit of a con man and actually made a very nice living out of also being a bit of a con man. But these guys aren't doing that. So does legitimizing these people, actual professionals, people that are actually there doing the work, mean that the government and the Senate committee, at very least, is starting to take them a little bit more seriously? Or is it more likely that there are political reasons why they're doing it? To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if there were. Get in the comments, though, and tell me exactly what you think. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out. And normally, we do talk about just science fiction. But seeing that, it's becoming fact now, I thought it was worth talking about. Also, though, you can go to patreon.com/SciTrek, where most of our new videos drop first, and you get to see them without the adverts for a small contribution each month that really helps out the channel. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.